first off, wake and crank. Next year there'll be a lot of stuff available. I'm going to have a lot of inventory. I'm going to be doing it a lot more. So, but it's hard not to emphasize that, to not get pigeonholed into doing one thing with one style bait. So with my wake and cranks, this is actually a floater. You can see how I modified the lip. It doesn't crank down at all. It just waves. This is a slow sink. This is actually a fast sink that I use, reeling uphill, and when I do fish down 10 feet deeper, I throw this. But the wake crank in general is a crank down hard bait. It'll wake on the slow retrieve, but for the most part, it's designed to get under the surface and get down and bang into stuff. So I'm using these in the standard wake and crank with, I say like a hard build, but it's pretty versatile because you could actually slow roll it over cover and give it a pause, or nice and steady with some jerks and erratic behavior, and not bang into cover, and fish will still come out and commit to this. That's why I call these transitional swim baits, if that makes any sense. For the guys that fish tournaments, you can pick these up and without investing heavily in a lot of gear and still do very well. So with the wake and crank from the top to the bottom, I'll really pitch it in pockets like a frog, underhand pitch it into to cover if I could get close enough because I'm the Delta, and let it sit there. I think something that I get really in a hurry, and when I cast it out there, I don't give it a chance to sit. I think you should probably let hard baits sit, especially lipped hard baits, when they're floating, just sit on top for a while. I mean, 5-10 seconds is probably good enough. That's an eternity for me. But when I do that, it seems to pay off for me. So from the beginning of the cast, I want to let it sit there and let the fish see it, because they still are big. They're still over 2.5 ounces, so it can come down with a splash. So after that, though, I mean, it depends on what I'm fishing. I fish these everywhere. You can fish weeds, rock, wood, open water, shade pockets, current, everything form of structure you could apply this to in the certain conditions. If it's gin clear and flat, I've got them doing that, even slow rolling. But I think your high percentage bait isn't going to be a style bait like this. It's going to be something else. Like I prefer to burn lipless baits or throw a soft bait in those conditions. But for the most part, when I'm applying this, if it's over weeds, you want to make contact with the cover. I know everyone says that over and over, but it's easy to fish over the cover because it's a hassle, especially with weeds. Guys don't want to get the treble hooks in the weeds, or it gets snotty. Out here we have that stuff that kind of hangs, it's like angel hair weed or something, and it hangs off the hooks. But honestly, if you're not getting your baits in there and tearing it out just like you would a lipless crankbait or a square bill, you're going to miss out on a lot of strikes. So when I'm fishing through weeds, I really am trying to be accurate with my casts, fish lanes, pockets, bring it into the cover, bring it over the cover, and modify my baits also. If the fish are in an inactive mood, I might step up. I use the Owner series of hooks, round bin, for the ST36 1X, and then I step up to the 2X ST46 tin hooks. Some people don't like the tin, but I've fished them on everything, and I've never noticed a difference, less bites or more, or whatever. They're great, and they look good on a shad color bait. And then the 3X, the ST56. So when you get up to 3X hooks, you're really going to slow this float rate down. So when you pause it, it can come up a little bit. And a little trick, I don't know if everybody does it, but if you want a bait that floats up to stay at a certain point, you can actually give it a pause and really slow crank the slack up and put tension on it, and it'll kind of hold it down, and it moves forward a little bit, but it'll keep it closer to the level you want it to stay at. And that's pretty easy when you don't have to have multiple baits to do different things. So really emphasize changing your hooks too if you want to adjust the bait to do different things, like hover over a weed pocket. And then when I move on to rock and wood, I consider that like hard structure or hard cover. I just smash it into that stuff. I know they're high dollar baits. Get it as close as you can. But you really want to contact that cover. Those fish will come out and absolutely smoke it. And you're using a heavy rod and heavy line. Hopefully I use 20-pound P-line PF, 25-pound P-line PF, or 20-pound big game. Sometimes I'll step up to fluoro. The only fluoro I use is this, in this pound, 20-pound sniper. if I want the baits to suspend or not float up. I really try to vary my equipment so I don't have to have a million baits on the boat. I hate having a ton of baits to choose from or retying all the time. That's when I could be making a cast. So just get it into that wood and rock, bang it in there, grind it off the riprap, make sure you retie, put it in the fish's face. And I mean, it sounds simple enough, but I think it's easy not to do. Especially if you're in a boat, you can go get the bait, bend the hook out, fish heavier line. I know it's scary. It's easy for me to say because I make them, but I mean, it makes a difference of getting the bites. Anytime you have shade pocket anywhere, guys will throw top water, flip a Cinco, whatever you're going to do in there. This is the same thing. You get it in there, and if I think that the fish might get too good of a look at it, as soon as it hits, I'll give it a rip or burn and make it smoke down, and then sit for a second. And a lot of times they'll reach out and grab it right there, especially when I'm doing shade pockets. Anywhere you fish, if you can find current, that's number one. It'll always position the fish. It'll make them in a predictable location. You can tell where they're facing. If there's current, if there's a piece of cover, they're going to be behind it. If there's weeds, they'll be in really heavy current. The weeds will see them folded over. They'll just be behind that, and they're still not sitting in there and swimming. They're relaxing down there. So don't be afraid of heavy current. Get it really in there in the cover. And grind it along the rocks. Vary up your retrieves. There's not one day that I go out there and they're doing the same thing. I just got a fish. I was doing my little pull technique where I'll pull it and give it slack, and it was sitting on top, and a fish came up and smoked it. I was just barely moving it. It was just barely wiggling on the top in between pulls, and it came up and crushed it. So, and the same day I got a bite when I was burning it past cover because the wind laid down. So I thought I needed a faster retrieve. So vary these up and throw them everywhere until you figure out what works for you. This is the Delta, so I can only speak for what works on this body of water. I know that it does that. Every place is not the same and all the fish aren't the same, but you're missing out because I know that if any conventional lures work, this type of stuff works. It just truly does. So when I'm throwing my wake and crank, I prefer my Spiralite Defiant series. This is a Defiant 8-foot heavy swim bait series. Wrap guides to the left. It's got that dynamic action where it's moderate fast, so it is faster. But as soon as you bow up with the fish, it bends right down in 2/3 down the blank. And the other thing I can recommend is using a 5-3-to-1 reel for this stuff. For all my crankdowns, 5-3-to-1 reel. That's especially for me. I can't slow down enough. And even when I get a 6-3-to-1 and I think I'm reeling slow, it just seems like I get more bites year in and year out throwing this 5-3-to-1. Sometimes the fishes are hot and I can't, and it's hard to keep up. But I feel like I have an advantage and I get more bites with this 5-3-to-1. Honest to God, I think it makes a difference, like a big difference. And then the last thing, some about the wake and crank. I'll probably talk about that in all these baits, but casting accuracy. If you can't make a long, accurate cast, you're really gonna have a harder time getting big bites, in my opinion. Of course, when you're making a long bomb cast, you're gonna have a big splashdown. But you got to be stealthy and quiet, and making long, accurate casts help. That's why I like to let it sit a little bit, because if you have an active fish, I think you cast right on them, but you're still far away, they might spook off and circle back around. That's what I've seen them do. I don't know, but I've seen them come back around, so I give them a chance to kind of get used to that bait in the area, and then it starts to retrieve, and it seems like sometimes that triggers bites. But if you're not making I think you should stay away from the cover as far as possible, just like any natural bait. But when you're throwing swim baits, you're looking for the bigger bites. So every cast should be treated like that. If you have a specific piece of cover, like really target isolated pieces that are obvious, like, dang, there should be a big one there. You have to approach it right to get her to bite. So I think that's the worst. That's probably the worst offender for bad habits or bad technique for people missing out on bites, I think, is casting accuracy. every time I watch Bobby Barrick speak, that guy's the man. You know, he knows big fish, and he can't emphasize it enough. Just like I think every pro probably couldn't. Like, you really want to get that in. When I make the perfect cast, you know, like most of my big fish have come on the cast, you know, when I make the presentation correctly. You don't get second chances a lot of times. So when you're picking up this wake and crank, I like to fish it around through everything, rip it through the weeds, bang it into cover. I know it's scary, but maybe get a lure retriever, fish heavier line, heavier hooks, and you know, just present it everywhere. Don't think of it as a swim bait. Think of it as a reactionary bait, because these fish will come out and follow it and smoke it, similar to a swim bait, but they'll also crush it at a reaction. And when they set up, you want to grab that Defiant series or whatever rod you have and set the hook, because if a fish comes up and grabs this, a big one, and their jaws are locked on it, you're going to want to move that bait in their mouth. They're really strong. So you want to move these treble hooks and set it into their jaw. So that's another thing. I mean, everybody has their own technique, but in my opinion, when a fish eats a big hard bait, set the hook. Sweep set it, but don't just pull on it or, you know, just pull the trebles into them. Jack her. You know, drive the hook home, and then keep steady pressure, and don't let them gain an inch. I mean, I'm always in shallow water around cover, but I've never had an experience of a big fish, you know, like giving them some line or letting them take easy. They usually take advantage of everything they can get. So that's why they get big. They're like Houdinis. So anyways, casting accuracy, throw it into all the cover, fish it a whole bunch of ways, and adjust these baits with the float rate, use different line, use different hook size. Sometimes you could upsize the front treble from a size 1 to a 1/0, and it'll give it that down facing position, and you can crank it deeper. You know, there's a lot of options. So use these baits for everything they're worth. They're worth more than just the standard option. You get a lot of uses out of these, and they should last you a long time. So thanks so much for checking me out. Check out Spiral Light Rods. We've got some swim bait rods in stock now. The rest dropping very soon. Top notch stuff. You know, they're unbelievable, especially for the price point. 40-ton Torrey and 30-ton Torrey off the hook. Anywhere from $109 to $129 for the swim bait rods. So, anyways, take it easy.